Hey, hey, hey. Happy Monday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, incredibly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard. Tonight is Monday, February 27th, 2023. This is live stream 891. So welcome aboard. If you're not familiar with the show, let me point out, super casual around here. We just hang out talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news and then taking a peek at a tabletop game. And tonight will be no different. We are going to be diving on in, unboxing, and taking a first look at Votes for Women from designer Tory Brown and Fort Circle Games. I have heard fantastic things about this game. It looks like this is the type of game that's right up my alley. We'll be diving on in, taking a first look in just a bit. But I'm telling you, looks pretty good. You know me in history games, especially when they're card-driven. I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for them. So we are going to be taking a look at that in just a bit. Do want to mention, once again, if you're not familiar with how this show works, we do tackle the tabletop gaming news first. So if you are watching live, looking to get into the unboxing and first look at Votes for Women, kick back, relax. It's going to be a bit, probably about 35, 40 minutes before we dive on into that first look. So just relax, enjoy yourself. Maybe you happen to be a subscriber to the channel, which I'll get to a little bit more of that in just a moment, how you can pass your time while you're waiting for the first look. But of course, if you're tuning in 30 minutes or more after this stream ends, then there will be timestamps. So if you're impatient and just gotta get to that unboxing, you'll be able to jump ahead, although you're going to miss some pretty cool tabletop gaming news, but you'll be able to jump ahead. And those notes are located in the show note area. I don't even know what that's officially called. I think it's show notes or video notes, something like that. Anyway, that's where you'll find timestamps. But depending on what device you happen to be watching this on, those timestamps might be right there in the timeline under your nose at the moment as you're watching after the stream ends. Remember, there's no timestamps right now as I'm streaming live. How could there be? Also, I want to mention, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you won't find here on the YouTube channel. In fact, you can welcome aboard our newest reviewer, Michael, who has provided us with his review of the Traveler Core Rulebook update from 2022. That's right, it's the latest edition of Mongoose Publishing's Traveler, and we've now got a review of that updated edition. So stay tuned for more Traveler from Michael as well. So welcome aboard, another member of the gang, sharing reviews. I am always on the lookout for role-playing game reviewers, especially those who are more than happy to get copies of PDFs. And one of the nice things about being a reviewer for the Gaming Gang is that you have access to all the PDFs that the reviewers are tackling, not only the ones that you've been assigned to review. So that's a nice little, bonus of reviewing role-playing games for the Gaming Gang. So, like I said, when you're not watching videos, check out the website. So, of course, if you are a subscriber to the channel and you're watching live, by all means, take part in chat. Yes, you know the drill. So, if you happen to be watching live and you want to say howdy, or maybe you've got a question or comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my best to respond. As I mentioned, you must be a subscriber, and you must be a subscriber for at least 48 hours before you can take part in chat. It's how I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. So, first out the gate tonight was the Motor City Madman. Yes, the Madman is with us in chat. He happens to also be one of our chat moderators. Kathy Evans is with us. Roger Prudhomme, Chuck Terrell, who I believe this might be Chuck's first visit with us in chat. Name isn't ringing a bell. Kevin Bertram's with us. Shaz is here. Liquid, Nebula, Stray Kismet, John Muscola, and I think I have said hello to everyone. So welcome aboard, everybody. So got a big show tonight. As I mentioned, we are going to be diving on into votes for women in just a bit. But first, let's take on the latest tabletop gaming news of the day. Because following a successful Kickstarter run, Brotherwise Games is going to be releasing the puzzly styled Castles by the Sea. Here's the scoop. Castles by the Sea takes place in a magical world hidden in plain sight. As a kingdom of shorelings, your goal is to build and populate sandcastles. Find the perfect placement for your sand blocks and meeples, but beware of looming hazards. This cleverly designed game combines puzzly spatial play with a delightful theme. Fans of games like Santorini and Tiny Towns will enjoy the challenge of optimizing their 3D castle building on a shared grid. Castles by the Sea is a puzzly sandcastle building game for 1 to 4 players. As a group of tiny folk called shorelings, your goal is to build and populate a seaside kingdom. Each turn, you'll place blocks and meeples on the map to earn victory points. The core gameplay is similar to abstract strategy games like Santorini, in that players must optimize 3-dimensional placement on a shared grid. Hazards are the only source of randomness in the game, and even those depend on player choices. Each turn, you must choose your placement carefully, optimizing your score while interfering with your opponent's plans. Game ends after a set number of turns. Few castles will remain standing after a final onslaught of hazards, but the kingdom with the most sand dollars can claim victory. Castles by the Sea is for 1 to 4 players, ages 12 and up, plays in 30 to 60 minutes. It's going to carry an MSRP of $54.95 when it arrives in August. I believe this is a Gen Con release. Looks kind of fun, looks kind of different. I am a fan of Tiny Towns. I don't necessarily see where the similarities are outside of building a town on a grid. So maybe that kind of falls into it a little bit. But there is no 3D spatial aspect to Tiny Towns. And I will mention that I am not familiar with Santorini at all. So this may be very similar in that respect. But I got to say, kind of like the theme. Seems like it should be kind of fun. Nice for the family as well. Dante Viper Brandolini has joined us in chat. Good to see you, Dante. Moving right along, there is a new Epic Encounters miniatures and adventure set. It's available for pre-order from Steamforged Games. Here's what I know about the step of the lizard thane. A people as ancient as the steppe they call home. The lizard folk whisper of war in uncanny, hissing voices. Nearby kingdoms live in fear of their brutal raids and the destruction left in their wake. Some say they eat the dead. Others believe they wield alien magic. One thing's for sure, no one has dared venture into their realm for many a year. Until now. Inside this box is everything you need to run a reptilian role-playing encounter. Perfect for new and experienced players, Step of the Lizard Thane is ready to play right away as part of a new or existing campaign. The lizard folk are brutal warriors who fight with savage ferocity. Their lightning raids leave few survivors. Can you survive against these cold-blooded combatants of the steppe? Danger, discovery, and adventure await. Designed to work with the 5th edition of the world's favorite role-playing game, this set gives any game master the tools to create a cinematic experience that will challenge and thrill their players. Step of the Lizard Thane, which happens to include 18 miniatures, can be pre-ordered right now for $54.95. It is going to ship in late May. Sweet. Love me some minis. We took a look at a couple of previous Epic Encounters, and one had a large size miniature of a dragon turtle, which was excellent. And then the other had these sea creatures, and those were very cool as well. So got to point out, these are really phenomenal miniature sculpts. And as you can see, I am sharing some of them as well. I think overall, out of the 18 miniatures, I think there are 12 unique sculpts. Pretty sure. So Dante points out that I, as in me, am the hardest working man on YouTube. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. So Coco B has joined us in chat, as has Verdrin Griblox. Good to see you both. So anyway, once again, this is available for pre-order, and it is going to ship in late May. Let's talk about some role-playing game news, because Columbia Games is now in the midst of a Kickstarter project to bring a 40th anniversary hardcover of the Harn World role-playing game setting to the masses. Here's what I know. Harn World is a detailed, realistic, flexible, and system-neutral setting for fantasy role-playing games. Since 1983, Harn World has been used by many thousands of people across the world to run a wide variety of medieval fantasy adventures. Harn World is based on the reality of medieval society and culture, blended with the fantasy elements we all know and love. This makes for a harsh, gritty background with original plot lines and background stories that will make your characters feel more alive. No matter what system you and your players are familiar with, Harn World easily weaves into the system. Use the setting full tilt, or simply pick and choose elements you like for some down-to-earth action in your campaign. Since it started in 1983, Harn World has had decades of material added to its realm, I should say. There are over 150 supplements, big and small, that enhance and enlarge the Harn World setting. More are made every quarter year with no signs of stopping. Wherever your role-playing goes, adventure awaits. So there is a Kickstarter video. It's just over a minute long. I am going to bring it on up, and I have to point out, I had to cut the music out because, yes, you guessed it, it would give me a copyright flag. So I would be stepping on somebody's copyright toes if I included the music here. But I did want to share this short video because it shows a lot of the artwork and kind of the formatting that you will find with Harn World. Now, I do believe we are looking at third edition images and maps and things along those lines as well. And I do want to point out that this new hardcover is not a new edition. This is not a fourth edition of Harn World. It is a hardcover edition of the third edition, which is the current edition of the game setting. So there is that. So, of course, this Kickstarter project for the 254-page 40th anniversary edition of Harn World has passed the 600% funding mark. You can reserve a copy of the hardcover for a $69 pledge through March 14th. Expected delivery is this June. So very, very quick turnaround. If you want to learn more, I did interview Grant Dalglish from Columbia Games yesterday and shared that interview last night. And we spend a good 40 minutes talking about Harn World, Harn decks, and what you can expect from the setting itself and this Kickstarter. And I got to point out that I am relatively familiar with Harn World. I can't tell you the ins and outs of everything, but the community for Harn is very, very loyal. They are very, very into their Harn. So keep that in mind. But if you are looking for a medieval setting that can easily be high fantasy or low magic, you might want to take a peek. You might want to take a peek at Harn. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily have to pledge support for a hardcover edition, especially if you're not familiar with this at all, but you'll probably want to take a peek. I should mention, I will probably be seeing some Harn books before this Kickstarter is over. So I should be sharing some with you shortly. Also, Grant was kind enough, he's going to send me their Wizard Kings Fog of War block war game. That's something else Columbia Games is very well known for, are their block games. And Wizard Kings is their fantasy setting. So he had mentioned he's going to send a review copy. So we will be taking a look at that in the very near future as well. But once again, you can support this Kickstarter. It is over 600% funded, and it runs through March 14th. On to my next news piece. Mongoose Publishing has released the Shield Maidens role-playing game, and I've got the dope. Daughters of Freya, raise your shields. Ragnarok rages. The cosmic tree, Yggdrasil, burns. The forces of the Fenrir Empire bleed life from the 9 realms to fuel their growth. The mightiest men cannot stand against them. Yet, the Shield Maidens stand strong, empowered by a ferocious spirit to stand against oppression and renew the cycle of ages. Shield Maidens fuses magic and technology to channel the might of the gods. Wielding powerful guardian shields, neon embers of undying honor, Shield Maidens dedicate their warrior souls to destroying the imperial boot that crushes humanity by the neck. It's a game of cosmic action in a high-tech Viking age. Shield Maidens is a game of women standing shoulder to shoulder with their sisters against the forces allied against all humanity. Create a diverse, inclusive cast of characters and dive into an action-packed role-playing game with quick, easy-to-learn rules that emphasize collaboration and teamwork. Be wary, The enemies of Midgard are many, and the gods will not help you. Only the mightiest women will be able to live on forever in the tales and songs of the shield maidens. Odin slumbers in the sunken halls of Asgard, and the pure are stirring in their burnished realm as Fenrir's grip grows ever tighter. Delve into the histories of realms of gods and mortals, using the knowledge to right the wrongs of the universe, topple empires, and slay manipulative gods. Learn the true capabilities of the Guardian Shield. Be aware, sisters, that the creatures of Yggdrasil are watching, and they have no love for humanity. Detailed within the Game Master's Guide, the Norns pluck the strings of fate, dragons roost amongst broken stars, and the Jotun yearn for battle. Only those willing to stand against tyranny will live on in the sagas. The 192-page Shield Maiden's Training Guide, I believe we are talking about this being the player's handbook, effectively, is available in hardcover for $49.99, or you can grab the PDF over at Drive-Thru RPG for $29.99. The 184-page Shield Maiden's Game Master's Guide is also available in hardcover for that same $49.99, or grab the PDF over at Drive-Thru RPG for $29.99. Yes, a new role-playing game from Mongoose Publishing. That is not something we see too often. They normally have focused, at least as of late, on Traveler 2nd Edition. So this is a little unusual. And it is kind of a different sort of setting. It does look very interesting. That's why I am sharing the news. And of course, there it is. Flaming Heron is with us in chat. And Flaming Heron points out that Mongoose charges far too much for their PDFs. Yes, I know. I feel like a broken record repeating that all the time. So I've kind of stopped mentioning that. But I agree. I am right with you on that. Even their physical cost on these hardcovers, I think a little pricey. I mean, we are looking right about 5e D&D hardcover pricing with that page count. But for like $50, I like to see like 225, 250 as far as a page count. This is a little light on that, but gotta say, artwork looks pretty sharp, pretty nice. Of course, that's something we come to expect from Mongoose. Their presentation and their artwork for Travelers is really well done. All right, got my final news piece. Following another successful Kickstarter, Children of Uma is now in print and PDF for authors George Colazzo and John McGuire. Here's the skinny. After the apocalypse, the world entered a neo-dark age. The convenience of a big city became a death trap. People manage on the fringe in groups, trying to survive, each with their own goals. The world has been divided into bands, some big, some small. Yours is small. The Helsings, a band of wild animals trying to reclaim a world forgotten. In Children of Uma, you are a member of the Helsings, a band of wayward orphans who find themselves in a post-apocalyptic dust bowl with electric vehicles and whatever weapons they can find to survive. Children of Uma is played using the 3-2-1 action RPG rule set. This adventure is a love letter to all the great 70s and 80s post-apocalyptic action adventures we grew up watching, where a band of plucky survivors roam the wasteland in a race for their lives. Desolation Alley, anyone? The 148-page hardcover, which includes the PDF, although I do believe it's a digest size, just to point that out, is available right now from Exalted Funeral. carries an MSRP of $30, or you can grab the PDF alone over at Drive-Thru RPG for $15. Yeah, so the children of Uma Thurman in a post-apocalyptic setting. That's pretty wild. See? Uma Thurman does have superpowers. Her children must be immune to radiation. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what it is. Madman says, that's quite the school bus. Yes, with that turret on the side. It's got like a ball turret on the side of the bus. Pretty nice. This looks kind of interesting. So, once again, you know me. I like sharing news pieces from smaller publishers and individual authors, things like that. So once again, this is available over at Exalted Funeral in hardcover, or grab the PDF over at Drive-Thru RPG. Speaking of Drive-Thru RPG, don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit, say, Drive-Thru RPG or Dungeon Masters Guild, Storyteller's Vault, what have you, please stop by thegaminggang.com first, click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. Especially seeing that I do not have a Patreon, I do not run Kickstarters to keep the Gaming Gang around. It is pretty much built off of advertisers. Yes, it's advertisers. Would you like to advertise with the Gaming Gang? Wet the old whistle there. So keep in mind, it's usually advertisers as well as people using the banner ads from Drive-Thru RPG, etc., as well as those who stop by paypal.me/thegaminggang. That's right. If you like this video, if you dig the channel, if you feel thegaminggang.com is a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can stop by paypal.me/thegaminggang and making a small donation. And a big thank you to everybody out there who utilizes those banner ads and or stops by paypal.me. Big tip of the cap. So thank you very much. All right, that is it for the news tonight. So we are going to be jumping on into an unboxing and first look at Votes for Women in just a few moments. But did want to point out that there is that interview that I did with Grant Dalglish from Columbia Games. If you haven't checked that out, by all means, take a peek. And I shared a video over the weekend, which has brought in quite a few views. And it's entitled, Do I Still Feel Welcome in the Tabletop Role-Playing Game Hobby? Or words to that effect. And I won't give away the whole video, but I have to chuckle because it has garnered a lot of comments and a good number of negative. But I mean, still, I think it's still running like 92% positive, which is always good. But I have to chuckle because in the video, I kind of get the ball rolling by saying that there are two tropes that were floating around, especially end of last week and into the weekend, that I kept running across. One was the pink-haired druids are ruining Dungeons and Dragons. And then the second was that a representative from Wizards of the Coast went on a show from an outlet hosted by African-American gamers and said, white guys like me, the sooner we're out of the hobby, the better, right? So I said, these are two tropes they keep running across. I never said who the person was, what the outlet was, anything like that, as far as white guys like me, the sooner we're gone, the better. But I did address, do you really think someone from Wizards of the Coast does Wizards of the Coast really truly believe this? The sooner white folk are out of the hobby, the better? Come on, right? But here's the point I'm making. I said they were tropes that I kept running across. So of course I get people who are all bent out of shape about what, I forget the guy's name. Kyle Brinks, is that it? I forget. What he said. They're like, oh, that's not what he said on the show. I never said what he said on the show. I said what the trope is, what people are reporting what he said. And I thought it was very funny how I was getting comments from people who are like, I watched 3 minutes of your video, and now I'm going to comment about, what you say without ever actually listening to what I really had to say. It was it's like, seriously, really? It's like, okay, all righty. But I have to laugh because it happens all the time. It happens all the time with videos on this channel. And I'm sure it happens with content creators everywhere. People hear what they think they hear. Now what comes out of somebody's mouth? It's like, there are videos from time to time I will have somebody in the comment section just rail up and down about what I said that was never said. It's like, what? So, Fleming Heron says, what was or wasn't said is irrelevant. What matters is the topic of the video. Correct. And the question was, did I still feel welcome in the tabletop role-playing game hobby? It's like, I thought it was funny. At one point in the video, I actually deleted this person's comment because there's only so much bullshit I'll take from somebody, and it's like, yeah, I don't need this. Bye. Blocked. See ya. So I had pointed out that most gamers, a great majority of gamers, do not play with strangers. They don't go to conventions. They don't go to friendly local game stores. And for many gamers, a friendly local game store is actually a luxury they don't have. Well, of course, this person's like, oh, you're basing everything on your experiences. If your experience is the only experience out there. 90% of gamers play with strangers, and 90% of game masters run games for people they've never met. It's like, what kind of bullshit is that? Is that some sort of some number that Wizards of the Coast has rolled out there as far as Dungeons and Dragons? 90% of Dungeons and Dragons players have played with people they don't know, or dungeon masters have run games for people they don't know. 90% of them? I don't necessarily believe that number, but regardless, I wasn't talking about Dungeons and Dragons. I said gamers. Once again, another of these, I'm going to get all upset about, because it's like, I'm not listening to what you're saying. So then they called me out on, your personal experience, you're making it up like your personal experience is the only experience. And then they go on to talk about how they have all these friendly local game stores near them. So how can I be saying that, most gamers don't have a friendly local game store that's conveniently located? It's like, Oh, I'm sorry. So you're busting my chops because, and I even said in the video that I was approaching that topic from my own personal experiences because it's the only way I can approach it. I can't answer the question, do I still feel welcome in the tabletop role-playing game hobby, and come at it from someone else's point of view? That's not answering the question, right? But yes, I had to laugh because they're like, blah, no, you're using just your personal experience, and then you're going to argue with me with your own personal experience. Got to be honest, sometimes running an outlet, it can be a challenge. It can really be a challenge to your sanity. So Fleming Aaron said, hearing what was said but not listening to what was said, Jeff, happens all too often. Yeah, I know. Fleming Aaron says they're outraged. Straight Kismet says I'm a badass. I don't see that. John Muscola says he's doing an LOL. So yeah, so if you haven't caught the video, you can check it out. I mean, it's just, once again, it's just me sharing an opinion. I had people asking me over the past month and a half or so, as a lot of this strangeness has gone on, do I still feel welcome, because I'm an old white guy? And they're like, don't you, kind of feel like the hobby is, moving past people like you? And it's like, people like me. It's like, and I do promise I am going to one of these days share a video of my definition of the old school Renaissance, or I guess I'll say OSR. But the next opinion video I am going to share is the OSR filled with right-wing extremists? Question mark. Because that is another question I get from people a lot. I have people who are always like, oh, you share all these really cool OSR role-playing games and adventures and things like that, but I have heard that there are a lot of people out there that I would not want to associate with who are part of the OSR. So that is going to be my next kind of like random musings video. I'm going to share that this weekend. So stay tuned, and I'm sure it'll piss some people off. I don't know what to tell you. All right, so we are going to be taking a look at votes for women in just a couple of moments. But first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
It's refreshment time, and our refreshment stand is loaded with good things to eat. There's crispy, crunchy popcorn, and hot, delicious buttered popcorn, lots of candy, and frosty, refreshing cold drinks. Why not treat yourself at the refreshment center now?
Hold it, Romeo. It's time for Hires, that real old-time root beer.
Since 1876, for pleasure and thirst.
You taste the difference. The flavor of actual root, bark, and herbs.
Hires to you, all your taste desires, for purity and better flavor.
Stop
And have a Hires. Yes, youngsters, oldsters, all agree, here's a drink for all the family. From the bottle, fountain, and the keg, too, it's real old-time Hires root beer for pleasure and thirst. Hires to you.
Patronize the refreshment stand here for popcorn, sandwiches, candy, ice cream.
and Hires root beer.
Here's the pitch on the beer which saves the day. Q-Depo 14K.
When the job's all finished, or it's finished you deserve a bottle of that golden brew.
The beer's so gold and good, they say. Q-Depo Cunepo beer is 14K, and 14K saves the day.
Saves the
Saves the
Saves the
Saves the day.
Do you drink Wilkins coffee?
No!
Oh, things just seem to happen to people who don't drink Wilkins.
It's landed. Ideal's new astrobase has just landed. Look, the space lock is opening. And here comes the astronaut. He's being lowered from the astrobase into the remote-controlled scout car. The two space probes are being mounted for launching. The car is scanning the area. And there go the space probes. They're calling them back to the astrobase. Mission accomplished. Ideal's astrobase and Colonel Macaulay's space helmet are the greatest way to play outer space. You can scan the skies, launch deep space probes, fire rockets, destroy stray meteorites. Ideal's astrobase is at your favorite toy store. Get your Ideal astrobase today.
Wonkin's nose! As in nose. Wonkin's got his nose busted. But he did live. At least he looks like he lived. Maybe. So more crazy old commercials to share with you. So Roger had mentioned that they are a 54-year-old old white guy. See, I've got him beaten by a year. And he welcomes everybody to his table, and he says, for the most part, feels welcome everywhere he goes. That's what counts. Yeah, I mean, if you check out the video, the message is actually pretty positive. So I know some people tuned out before they got to that message, but that's okay. So there's some discussion about, wait a second, old white guys, you're not allowed to have opinions here. That's it. Sorry. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. So Lord Cos 2000 is with us in chat. Welcome aboard. All right, so tonight we are going to dive on in and take a first look at Votes for Women from Fort Circle Games. It's designed by Tory Brown with artwork provided by Brigitte Indelicato and Mark Rodriguez. Hopefully I've pronounced those names correctly. The game is for 1 to 4 players, ages 12 and up, plays in around 60 to 75 minutes, carries an MSRP of $75. So let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Votes for Women. So a few things I do want to mention before we dive on in. The fine folks over at Fort Circle Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the gaming gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this coverage with you. And these days, it's very important that you know that. All right, so let's take a peek at the back. It is July 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York. The reading of a Declaration of Sentiments has just lit the spark in the fight for women's suffrage. For more than 70 years, this fight would touch every corner of the U.S. and expose the power and pitfalls of the social movement. Its goal? Ratify the 19th Amendment and secure for women the most fundamental right to vote. Votes for Women plays out this exciting chapter of American history. The suffragists organize rallies, earn support, lobby Congress, and campaign across 48 states. Victory won't be easy. The opposition will leverage the power of the patriarchy to maintain the status quo. Competitive, cooperative, as well as solitaire play are possible. All right. I have heard really, really good things about Votes for Women. So let's get this shrink wrap off. it looks to me, and I could be absolutely wrong, but it looks to be a bit of the same vein as 1960, The Making of a President, with almost like control markers in each of the states, right? So we get a bunch of dice. So it looks like we've got 12-siders, 8-siders, and 6-siders of various different colors. We have various different decks of cards. We also have, I think there are a couple of promos in here. We will take a look at those. So we've got the decks, and then we have a lot of various different tokens. So we have red X's, purple cubes, we've got orange cubes, and then we have kind of mustard, purple, and kind of like the orange or kind of a brick color. And these are men, women, and what are the purple? Purple look like women as well. So these are kind of cool because they're actually all kind of, well, I don't know if they're all different, but we have various different designs here. So as an example, we've got a gentleman in a top hat. And then he's got his hand up there. We have a woman in a dress and hat. So kind of cool that we've got, there's another, looks like she's carrying a flag. Very cool. I like that. I like how they're all, well, like I said, I don't think they're all different, but there are a variety of these designs. Right, then we've got, looks like we've got green checks. We have some various different columns here. We've got white, and then we have black cylinders. And then here are the kind of mustard colored cubes here as well. All right. So we're going to dive on into the rule book. We're going to take a look at that. Then we'll dive on into the board and some of these cards. Look at this. We get some designer notes. Sweet. This looks so cool. I have to point out, if you are interested in learning more about the suffragist movement, there is a 2-part American Experience from PBS that I watched. I probably watched it a couple of years ago. And it's a 2-parter, and it's like 4 hours in total. And I want to say it's called The Vote. And it is excellent. You'll have to check, because I know with PBS, at least here in the U.S., a lot of times, a lot of episodes of shows are available free to stream on their app. That might be one of them. All right, so the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. It is the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Votes for Women is an asymmetrical 2-sided game that revolves around the battle to ratify or reject the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The suffragist side will push Congress to propose the 19th Amendment and campaign to have 36 states ratify the amendment. The opposition side will try to prevent Congress from proposing the amendment or, failing that, to have 13 states reject the amendment. Players will add or remove congressional markers as support for the amendment waxes and wanes in Congress, while also placing purple/yellow cubes, suffragist side, or red cubes, opposition side, to reflect their political power in individual states. When a player gains support in a state, they first reduce or eliminate their opponent's cubes as needed before adding their own cubes, so that a state will only ever have purple/yellow or red. Tessie Trekkie has joined us in chat and mentioning what I had pointed out a bit earlier before we cracked this open, talking about how this has a bit of a 1960, the making of a president vibe to it. And I got to be honest, I love 1960. So that is certainly not a knock on this by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so our victory conditions. If the 19th Amendment has not been sent to the states for ratification by the end of turn 6, the opposition side immediately wins the game. If the 19th Amendment has been sent to the states, as soon as the 36th state ratifies the amendment, the suffragist side immediately wins the game. As soon as the 13th state rejects the amendment, the opposition side immediately wins the game. It says, because of the importance of the history of the campaign to pass the 19th Amendment, we have included a historical supplement and designer's notes booklet, which we are going to be taking a peek at in a moment. How about in English, Chef? A kamza? Sometimes my eyes get ahead of my mouth. A composite of all the suffrage-related stories from the August 19th, 1920 of the New York Times and several historical documents that are described in the supplement. Nice. So here's our board. So we have our 48 states, which at the time of the passage of the 19th Amendment, that's how many states were in the United States. There were 48. So it looks like we've got it broken up into regions. Got our different pieces. So these are campaigners. And then we have our support cubes. Our check marks are X's, so that shows if a state has ratified or rejected the 19th Amendment. Let's see what these are here. Oh, congressional markers to indicate the level of support for the 19th Amendment in Congress. This is a turn marker there. So what are the dice? Oh, so the dice are used in solitaire and cooperative play. Well. And then we have 12 suffragist buttons of 4 designs and 6 opposition buttons of 2 designs. We have here. We have 5 different decks of cards, which we'll be taking a look at in just a moment. So we've got event cards. We have state and strategy cards. So Tessie Trekkie says, it'll be a cold day in heck before I recognize Wyoming is a real state. I've been through Wyoming multitude of times. People there are pretty nice. I would usually stop in Cheyenne, and every once in a while I'd stop in Rawlins. Rawlins is pretty tiny. Well, there isn't actually any like huge city in Wyoming, but so we've got the setup for a 2-player competitive game. So we've got our sequence of play. We have a planning phase, strategy phase, operations phase, and cleanup phase. In the planning phase, each player draws 6 cards from their draw deck. When added to either their start card on turn 1 or their card held from the previous turn on turns 2 to 6, their hand should begin with 7 cards. So, seems here, okay, so with the strategy phase, says you skip that on turn 1. So in the strategy phase, the suffragist player announces how many of the stars, which are, where was it? Is that, oh, they're buttons. Okay. How many buttons are going to commit to the strategy phase, and they can commit 0 if they would like. And then the opposition player gets to defer, match, or supersede suffragist player's commitment. Looks like this is kind of to determine who's going to go first. So Quantum Phase Dragon has joined us in chat. Welcome aboard. So Quantum Phase Dragon's pointing out that they have shared their first publication on Drive-Thru RPG. Well, congratulations. So then we have our operations phase, where a player can play a card from their hand, and they've got 4 options. They can play the card as an event. They can play the card for a campaigning action. They can play the card for an organizing action. They can play the card for a lobbying action. So I would take a guess, playing it as an event is the event that's on the card. Campaigning action, you can roll one of your dice, one of the looks like blue dice, for each campaigner you have in play on the board. And they assign those dice to each of their campaigners. And it looks like that's how you're going to be placing the support in that state they're campaigning in. Huh, okay. So you can play a card for an organizing action. So you can take as many, I believe these are buttons, is what this it says the star represents. As they have campaigners in play, then the card is placed in the discard pile, or you can play the card as a lobbying action. So you would roll the red 6 dice, as many campaigners you have in play, and for each 6 rolled, the player can add 1 support to Congress or remove 1 support from Congress. Of course, if you are playing as the opposition, then we have our cleanup phase. So, talking about the organizational buttons, sending the 19th Amendment to the states, adding or removing cubes in a state, claiming state and strategy cards, our final voting, how to play with 2 players, playing with 2 suffragist players. So you would have 2 suffragist players playing against a bot, no doubt. Playing with 2 opposition players. There you go, managing the Oppo bot. And those are our rules. All of what, 12 pages? Yep, 12 pages. So looked like everything was pretty upfront and crystal clear, just taking a peek through. All right, next up, we're going to take a look at that designer's supplement. Wow, that's kind of cool. So these, I believe these are just kind of reproductions of historical documents. I think that's what this basically boils down to. I don't think these items have anything to do with the actual gameplay, but that is pretty cool. That is pretty nice. And then we have the League of Women Voters, a brochure for them. The new Southern Citizen. Oh, there's a bunch of these. A bunch of this stuff in here. Equal Franchise Society. Oh, these are the articles from the New York Times. Pretty wild how newspapers used to look. And the funny thing is, the front page of newspapers really didn't change until about the 1960s. So if you see, like, front pages from like the 1940s, yes, there's usually a headline and an image, but the rest of the front page usually looks pretty similar to this. The anti-slavery bugle, and then we've got our game board. Looks like we've got some tokens, as we'll get those out. These are those buttons, and they're actually a pretty good size. All right, so we'll be looking at these in just a moment. But let's take a look at the historical supplement and the designer notes. So this is an official program from Washington, D.C. for the suffrage movement. So we get a letter from the designer, Tory Brown, and it says, I created Votes for Women as a love letter to one of the most successful movements in American history. Few notes about language. This game uses American activists' preferred label, suffragists. Suffragettes was an initially derogatory term that British activists claimed as their own. Contemporary language from 1848 to 1920 refers mostly to the women suffrage movement, and this is my preferred term. However, at the publisher's insistence, the Votes for Women game uses the modern construction of women's suffrage. The terms white supremacy and racial domination were widely used during the historical era of the game setting and appear in newspaper clippings, speeches, and other ephemera from that time. So we get some info about the patriarchy and the Declaration of Sentiments, a timeline with the historical documents, which we saw in the box. I think that's a very cool extra. Quantum Phase Dragon says, this game looks really interesting. Testing Trekkie said, 1960 vibes are increasing. So much 1960 vibes. Like I said, that's a good thing. So a discussion of each of these various different items that have been included. We get our credit page here, and loads of play testers. So pretty short historical supplement for Votes for Women. Okay, so we also have the map, or I should say game board. This is really wild. I think this is so cool that we have all these extras. That's really interesting. That's a very interesting decision to include all of these, because they don't seem to have anything to do with gameplay, but I really dig that. I think that's very nicely done. All right, so we have, these are the buttons. So we have Votes for Women. It's a man's world unless women vote. We have the American Women's Suffrage Association, National American Women Suffrage Association. So that's 1948. Votes for Women, and then we have anti-suffrage and Vote No on women suffrage. These are those buttons that are being referred to in the rules. And I got to say, the punch board is nice and thick. Nice and thick. So Kevin Bertram is with us. Hi, Kevin. Says Jason Matthews, the co-designer of 1960, as well as my all-time favorite game, right? Twilight Struggle, was a senior play tester for this game. Straight Kismet says, Mom said not to press her buttons. Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea. All right, so here we've got the board. So we've got the West, Plain States, South, Midwest, Atlantic, and Appalachia, as well as the Northeast. Looks like this is our support in Congress, where we would put those columns. We have our 6 turns. We have, I'm going to take a guess that these are event cards that you would put here. Cards in effect for the rest of the turn, cards in effect for the rest of the game, cards in effect for final voting. We'll go into this section here. Kind of not a very busy board, which I do like that. I like that quite a bit because that kind of stays with our, late 19th century, very early 20th century vibe to it. So that is that. Now we have 5 decks of cards. I'm going to start putting some of these things back in. Got all these dice as well. I shared those before. All right, so let's see. Am I going to need to pull out the hobby knife? Probably. That's probably my best avenue. And I got to say, I'm pretty impressed. Looks like we've got artwork and flavor text on each of the cards. So that is cool. Come on. All right. So here we've got strategy. Here's our opponent, our Oppobot. It's something else that I think is pretty interesting with this design is that you can play 2 players and you can play them as pro-suffrage. And then you can also play them if you want to have them as anti-suffrage. That's kind of interesting. So here's our Oppobot. And then we have, looks like these are broken up by start early. We're going to have a mid. Yep, middle. And then late. So I don't know if we will actually shuffle these in or not. And it looks like these Oppobots, or the Oppobot is, of course, everything is marked anti-suffrage. So does that mean we have a pro-bot? We might. We might have a pro-bot. Let's see. Okay, so this is the suffrage or suffragist deck. We have states cards, and then we have opposition. So this is the opposition deck as well. And the promos, probably going to have 1 suffragist and 1 opposition, is going to be my guess. Yep, that's what we've got. So we've got a promo, board games for suffrage. It says, never underestimate the power of play. Suffragists here and abroad used games and toys to reach new audiences and make the fight a little more fun. That's cool. And then the opposition promo is postcards against suffrage. This I actually knew about. So it says, the postcard industry cranked out many popular images depicting suffragists as domineering and men suffering under their abusive wrath. Get out and get under. It says, if you love your wife and much less your life, get out and get under. So Tessie Trekkie says, I'm thinking this is a get a place on my shelf. So Stray Kismet talking about their wife and not pushing her buttons. Okay, so let's see. What are the strategy cards? So we've got efficient organizing. I'm not going to look at all of them, but change in plans. Look at your opponent's hand. Your opponent must discard one card of your choice that does not have a yellow, purple, or red on it. These are the campaigners. Your opponent then draws one replacement card from their draw deck. Do not use versus Oppobots. Eye on the future. Playable if it is turn 5 or turn 6. Look through your draw deck and select one card. Play for its event immediately. Then reshuffle your draw deck. Looks like the Oppobot gets to use that. Okay, so we've got a few strategy cards, not a ton. Maybe a dozen is what I would guess there. Then we've got states. So I'm going to take a guess. These are critical states. So I would say maybe this is if they ratify. If they ratify the amendment. So draw 2 cards from your draw deck, discard one card, and play the other card for its event immediately. So that's California. Illinois is in here. Add 6 purple or yellow or 6 red to the Midwest region. No more than 2 per state. So I'm taking a guess. Yeah, I'm taking a guess. These cards probably come into play when those states either ratify or reject the amendment. Cool. Interesting. All right. So let's take a look at the opposition first. So we have start early, like I said, middle. What do we have? Late? Yep. And I'll have to take a look. It's possible that first 2 rounds are, or first 2 turns, I forget what they're utilizing, what terminology they're using, might be the early, so you'd get early and start cards in your deck. Then maybe turns 3 and 4 are the middle, and then the late is turns 5 and 6 possibly. You're going to shuffle into your deck, because I wouldn't think you would have this entire deck to start off with, simply because you could get a hand of cards where all your events are late. I mean, that is a possibility. So here we've got the patriarchy. And as I mentioned, we have flavor text, what appears on each of the cards. It says, a term first coined in 1632, patriarchy describes a social hierarchy and system of political power dominated by men for their own advantage. Progress, not politics. Draw 6 cards from your draw deck. Place any number of the 6 cards on top of your draw deck and the rest at the bottom of your draw deck. A threat to the ideal of womanhood. Suffragists confronted and challenged the cult of domesticity, a set of assumptions about the role of middle and upper class Protestant women in America. So it's kind of wild how we've got all these really interesting events that are probably going to be a lot of things that the vast majority of people who pick up this game are going to have absolutely no clue about, and they're going to learn about. And that is one of the reasons why I love a ton of these card-driven historical games, because you get to learn history as you go. Now, unfortunately, we didn't see a booklet in here that kind of gives us like a brief synopsis of what each of these cards represent, like we do with a lot of the GMT games. But we do get the flavor text that kind of gives us that information. So Kevin says you create your deck with the late cards on the bottom, the middle cards, then the early cards on top of the draw deck. So I did notice we do have some cards where they mention reshuffling your draw deck. So I guess once that would take place, then you can start playing the late cards whenever. I don't know. We'll find out when we check out the rules. So here we have the unnecessary privilege. Josephine Dodge was a leading anti-suffragist who thought the vote was unnecessary because of the certain rights legislatures had granted women. Okay. I know one of the big anti-suffragist tropes that they floated out there all the time was, well, if women got the vote, next thing, women would be fighting in wars. Did you want your wife, your daughter, your sister to go off and fight in a war? So Tessie Trekkie says, oh, hey, new fact I learned today. As a 28-year-old naval officer, Jimmy Carter coordinated the response to the world's first nuclear reactor meltdown in Canada. Okay, so I have to ask, because it's been probably about 7 hours since I saw the news. Are you basically insinuating that Jimmy Carter died today? And that's why you learned that fact? I don't know. I haven't seen the news in a few hours, so just kind of curious, because I'm really not looking forward to that day. Regardless what you thought of Jimmy Carter as a president, if you were even around back then, there is no argument that he's a pretty damn fine human being. All right, so this is the suffragist deck. We have the Seneca Falls Convention. That is our start. Led by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, the resulting Declaration of Sentiments helped advance and shape the struggle for women's suffrage. We've got the Union Signal. Tessie Trekkie says Wikipedia says he's still alive. Yeah, because I know he started undergoing hospice care last week. So, unfortunately, I would think in the next week or two, we're going to get that bad news that we've lost another living president. So the Union Signal, magazines written by and for women like the temperance-driven The Union Signal, had great reach and helped bring more activists into the movement. Helen Keller, there we go. Best known as a hero for the disability community, Keller was also a radical socialist and supported women's suffrage in speeches and processions. Woodrow Wilson. We have made partners the women in this war. Shall we admit them only to a partnership of suffering and sacrifice and toil and riot, to a partnership of privilege and right? Yeah. Gotta say the cardstock's pretty decent, but as I say with all of these card-driven games, I always recommend sleeve your cards, even if you're using the cheapo penny sleeves, which aren't a penny anymore, but still, just to protect your cards so the game will last far longer. This looks really, really fascinating, I must say. And I will be getting this to the table as soon as possible. I already have this slated to be traveling with me to GaryCon because I had mentioned that myself and my best friend Elliot Miller are going to be at GaryCon this year. And over the weekend, we put in for the various different events. And we did leave a good amount of time for us to just bust out, board games to play ourselves. And this is going to be in the car with me. So I'm hoping by that point, I'll have played this a few times and maybe even had a review of this out, because the rules did not look very complex at all. So we've got the board, the punch board. We've got the cool little additional historical representation of the recreations that are in here. We've got the historical notes and designer notes, the 12-page rule book. We've got the 5 decks of cards, a slew of dice, which it looked as if they're mainly utilized for solitaire play or cooperative play against the bot. And that is what we find when we take everything from Votes for Women outside the box. Once again, this is designed by Tory Brown. This is for 1 to 4 players, ages 12 and up. Plays in around 60 to 75 minutes. Wonder if that's what the box says. Yes, it does. So I was going to say, I think I pulled the play time from Board Game Geek, and we know how a lot of times those numbers are wrong. And you can pick this up right now for an MSRP of $75. Looks like there is a good amount of gameplay packed into this box. And as I had mentioned, I will be reviewing Votes for Women in the very near future. I'm excited. This looks very cool. Yeah. It's always fun when I bust open something and I'm like, wow, this is very intriguing. Yes. And I can learn something by playing this. Yes. And once again, as I mentioned, if you have an opportunity, try to check out The Vote on PBS. It was a 2-part American experience, which was just really, really well done. Really, really good overall and pretty even-handed. I actually really liked how it addressed some of the problems within the suffrage movement. And that could have been handled far better, especially racially. That was something that I thought was very interesting. All right. So that is it for this time out. What's cooking for the rest of the week, you may be wondering? Well, I forgot. We've got all these markers in that, all these tokens in Votes for Women. Let's not forget those. Because how else are we going to show support and who's ratified and who's rejected the amendment? Anyway, on tomorrow's show, we are going to jump on in and take a first look at Pathfinder Treasure Vault from Paizo Inc. Over the weekend, I shared the Paizo preview. I think it was the weekend. Maybe it was Friday of last week. Took a quick peek inside, but we're going to take a far more detailed look at Treasure Vault on tomorrow's show. And then on Wednesday, we are going to crack open and take a peek at Banish the Snakes from GMT Games. This game is about the saints spreading Christianity throughout Ireland. So that seems pretty unique. Pretty interesting. So we are going to be taking a peek at this on Wednesday's show. And I've got some stuff that is in transit right now. All depends on what's showing up. But as I mentioned, we've got some Harn on its way. I'm supposed to have everything from Kingmaker for Pathfinder on its way. If that's the case, we are at some point going to have a Kingmaker week. We might end up doing a Harn week. So there are some board games that are on their way. So got a lot of stuff cooking. I also have Icon for Mirkbig, but I gotta say, this is pretty small. And I know there are like 4 booklets inside here. I think I'm just gonna shoot a little standalone video for it. Just because a first look on the dispatch, oh, it's gonna take us 10 minutes maybe. So, alrighty then. So if you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when the dispatch streams live Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central. It'll also inform you when I upload standalone videos, such as my aforementioned Do I Still Feel Welcome in the Tabletop Role-Playing Game Hobby video. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you're not going to find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. If you were watching live, thank you very much. If you were watching live and took part in chat, a much bigger thank you, because not only do you keep me company, so I don't feel like a total doofus just babbling on into the ether, but you also keep each other company while I'm babbling on. So thank you very much for that. Of course, I know not everyone gets an opportunity to watch this live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. I appreciate each and every one of you tuning in to check out any of the videos on the channel. And thank you to every one of you out there who's a subscriber to the Gaming Gang channel, because we just recently passed 10,000 subscribers. Thank you very, very much, everyone. All right, I will be back tomorrow. And of course, until I see you next time, I should say, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it happens to be in your neck of the woods. And until I see you next time, here's hoping all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, that's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.